All right. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to hear all about you and your work. EJ, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My name is EJ Duff. I was raised in Vermont, born in Philly. I started hurricane woodwork, I think 6 years ago, 5 years ago, somewhere in there. I'm animal obsessed. I live for the outdoors, and woodworking kind of just makes all that possible. And I love it.
That's awesome. Yes. We just spent like 10 minutes talking about animals before we were like, oh, hey, we're here to record an interview. So, yeah,
oh, yeah, that thing.
We're supposed to be working. Oh, well. But that's why
Everybody
I love this.
get a cat. Everybody get cats. I'm just saying.
That's basically, too long, didn't read, get a cat.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Well, how did you get started into woodworking?
So I took a couple of woodshop classes in high school. I went to school, middle school, high school in Vermont, and it was like one of the states, like the last holdout on the old frontier lifestyle. And so we still learned all of the trades through school. There's like an auto shop class, there were woodworking classes, there were, a bunch of different, there was a botany class. I took one on how to grow poinsettias for Christmas, like one year. Like it was just like a really cool, I raised pigs one year. Like it was just a really cool combination of both like the trades and actual like academia. And so I got a little bit of exposure of woodworking through that. And then when I went to boarding school, I did another woodshop class because I went to boarding school in Maine, and they also had, like different trade school classes. And so I had some exposure there, and then I lost touch with it for a long time. I went to college, and I got a wonderful, but albeit useless major in sociology, and loved every minute of it. Voluntarily wrote a 75-page thesis just because, I'm a gigantic nerd, but it was like totally not helpful in the context of like getting a job. I worked as a dog walker for 5 years after high school. I worked, I waited tables, I did bartending, I did all that stuff. And then one year I met a random person in a dog park while walking dogs, and she and I became friends, and then she connected me with her then ex-boyfriend to do construction. And so I did construction with him for, I want to say like 8 months, 6 to 8 months. It was a very short stint. My spine, I grew up riding horses, so my back is not the best. And my back just could not keep up with the demolition work and the hauling of boxes of rocks, literally, to do foundation stuff. And so after I remodeled the bathroom by myself, I did all the demo work with the tile work and got rid of all of the tile by myself, which wound up being like 2,000 pounds of tile, and hauled it down 4 flights of stairs in a Philly row home. And like the day I finished that job, I was like, it's been great. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm good. You have a good one. I wish you the best with this project. I'm out. And so I like packed up my stuff. I went home, and I had like a circular saw and a drill and driver and some like a tool bag of like random job site tools, like a square and, I think it was like a chalk tape. Like nothing particularly helpful in what I do now, with the exception of the square and the circular saw. But once I got home, I was like, all right, well, I have these tools. Like, what am I going to do with them? And so then I just started making like random crap around my house. Like I started with a shoe rack, and that's still like one of my most popular items. I think I've sold 200 and something of them to date. And they're super cute, very simple. I made them out of pallets that I found, on the side of the road. I wound up buying like a jack that I could easily take apart pallets with. Best $30 I ever spent, because I didn't have to like pry apart pallets with a crowbar anymore. And then, it just kind of grew from there. And I, watched the occasional YouTube video, but I say this like as I'm starting my YouTube channel, like I don't love watching YouTube videos. It's not my favorite pastime. I find that people spend entirely too much time talking about, their channel existing or, what they're going to talk about. And I'm like, can you just like kind of get to it? I have things to do. Like, I don't care about you and what you're doing. I'm so sorry. I wish I did, but I just don't. And so I would like skip and then I would miss things and it was just annoying. So like, I really love the breakdown of like the step-by-step that you can easily refer back to. And so I found those, used those a lot, watched the occasional video on like, okay, here's the step-by-step on how to do this. Like, oh, okay, great. And then just like a lot of trial and error. And there has been so much error, but it's been good. And I learned from my mistakes and, I like learning that way. So whatever works for me, and whatever works for anybody else, just do you. But that's kind of how I got here and, just kept messing around with it, kept figuring things out.
Yeah, very cool. And I'll have to agree with you on the YouTube videos. I'm the same way. I'm just like, all right, let's skip. Okay.
Yeah.
But it also made me like try to be very intentional about this project too, because there are so many people out there that do great how-to videos and doing very well. And I do think a lot of people start YouTube channels without like a real direction or intention. So they do make videos that are just kind of blah, 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 blah. And it's like, so I'll be really interested to see
also
yours.
Like the context of, having to make certain things, if you're trying to like make a YouTube channel and like coming at it from like a business perspective, you have to like create this following, which is really, really hard. Like finding people who actually want to hear you talk, which is like a whole thing because like, we all have our own lives. So we're like, I don't have time. Like, I just don't. And so you have to like try and get people interested in what you're talking about. So you try and hype it up. You try and be like, and also please subscribe, because the only way that you're going to get, any sponsors is by people subscribing. So like I get it from like a business perspective, from an influencer perspective, like trying to get people on board with what you're doing so that you can get these deals for yourself in the future, make your life a little bit easier, make it a little bit more worth your time, because YouTube channel videos also take forever. They're like, it is like the amount of planning that goes into those things is bonkers. And so I totally understand why people are like, so please subscribe. If you like my video, please leave a comment, please like it, please blah, 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 blah. Like, I get it, but it doesn't make it any less annoying. You're just like, please, can you, like, I really need, so I understand all of it, but yeah, there's two sides to each coin.
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. And I'm with you. Like, I totally understand. And please like and subscribe. It doesn't really bother me as much. One thing that I think is really important for people to think about too is like, you might not have the biggest audience, but if you have an engaged audience that you connect with, and authenticity is so important in that, because if you aren't authentic, people can sense that, they can sniff that out, and
totally,
they lose interest. So you're absolutely right. And it's really interesting though to see, with brands and in my own experience, to see that yes, there are influencers and people with huge numbers, and that's just like, I mean, that's got to be their full-time job. I don't know how they manage anything else,
Yeah, I think they outsource, in all honesty. Like, a lot of it gets outsourced because it's just not possible. I don't have a huge following on Instagram. I have like 2,800 followers, which is incredible, and I'm blessed to have it. But it's not a huge number. These people who have like 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 followers, and they're putting out videos daily or weekly or whatever. I mean, just the amount of time that I spent last week setting up my camera. I had to like make a little camera stand so that my phone would stand upright, setting up the camera in the right angle so that I could video exactly what I was doing, and then breaking it down and talking about it, and like talking through like, okay, here's the next step, here's what I'm going to do. And then doing like separate videos for, you know, okay, normal speed, here's what I'm doing, to, you know, 5 times speed, whatever that's called. Oh God, I'm forgetting words, but you know what I'm talking about, where you like go warp speed through something and then set it up again and do like, and then putting it all together. And it's just, I'm just like, thank God I have, you know, my partner who's an interior designer, or that's a lie, she's a graphic designer. And so she does all my video stuff. So I don't have to worry about actually putting that video together, but I know that she spent like 5 hours doing it. And so it's just like the amount of time that it takes is bonkers. And then like keeping up with the social media aspect of everything is also like a full-time job in and of itself, and doing taxes is its own full-time job. Like, how many jobs do I need to have to run this business? Like, my God. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I know some of, especially with YouTube, because like you said, it's so time intensive. I know once people get to a certain size, like they definitely hire editors. And I've definitely, you know, I've heard people say that, like, because for me, like, I just like posted a reel on Instagram and it took me like every bit of 45 minutes to get that 30-second clip. And it was like,
yep.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You know,
I'm going to be totally honest with you. I don't even know what a reel is. I have not figured, I don't know what that is. I know that it's a thing that keeps popping up on my feed, but I'm like, dude, I just figured out a story like 3 months ago. Leave me alone. Like, I can't.
They
I'm like, am I
things.
supposed to be putting hashtags in my stories? Am I supposed to be bringing people in with my stories? I don't understand. People are like, you need to find new hashtags for your posts. I'm like, that's not going to happen. Nope. Absolutely not.
I'm serious. Like that alone, like because I browse, like, of course, the women of woodworking hashtag, but I try to see other like relevant hashtags, and I'm like, this is taking me an hour in itself, you know, just to see what else is out there. And like, I'm able to find, you know, especially for like Feature Friday and some of that stuff that I do to kind of like pull in different makers. That would be how I'd like discover new makers and things. But now it's like, it still takes so much time. So,
yeah.
But anyways, speaking of influencing and all of that, and to kind of bring it back to your woodworking, have you had any major influences or mentors that have helped you advance your woodworking practice?
You know, that's a complicated question in some ways, because like, yes, there have been a bunch of like really amazing woodworkers that I've followed and that I see, you know, like Greg Fugit at Fugue Woodworking is another maker in Philly who I admire so much. He's so talented and he's such a nice guy, you know, like that's kind of the clincher for me. Like, you have to be a halfway decent human being, because like, I can't, like, there's so many people who are so talented, but if you're like kind of a crap person, or if you don't seem to care about the people who are like trying to learn from you, then like, I don't understand why I don't see the point in me giving my time to you, even though I could like probably learn something from you. I'm sure I could. I'm sure you're incredibly talented and you know a bunch about a bunch, and that's awesome for you. But like, I don't know. So I have like a bunch of like smaller time people who I really look to and admire, but haven't necessarily talked like business with in that capacity. Like, I follow them on Instagram. I check in on them like randomly. I have like a bunch of great friends who I've made through Instagram. You know, like my buddy Mike at Oldham Woodworks is down in Texas. And he's just incredible. And he does like the most beautiful marking knives I've ever seen. And when I ordered one from him, I was just like, you're so talented. Like, this is so cool. And I can't believe that like you make these, and like, how do you make them? And he was like, oh, I bake them in my oven. And I was like, excuse me? What? He was like, oh, I temper the steel in my oven. And I was like, like, I thought he was kidding. He was not. But I was just like, that's so cool. So then I ordered one from him, and he sent me this like crazy long message on Instagram being like, thank you so much for doing this. You actually like made my business. Like, I had never sold one before you bought one from me. And it means just the world to me that you did that and you showed interest and you made me feel like what I was doing was worthwhile and fantastic. And I just can't thank you enough. And like my following doubled after you posted about it. So thank you. And I was like,
Oh,
no problem, buddy. Damn, the warm fuzzies.
I was gonna say, gonna make you cry all up in the club.
Right? And then he made me, I'm gonna show you. He made me this one for my birthday. And it's just like this truly, and he like etched it with my name. Like he
that
just
is beautiful.
Right? It's just freaking incredible.
Wow.
And so it's just like I have these people who aren't huge on Instagram, you know, and they're just the best people, and you can learn so much from like just tiny little companies who like could know nothing but could also know everything about like one thing. And just I don't know, I just love this community. It's like a lot. Like I know I've only named 2 people so far, but like there's so many amazing people who I've like learned little bits from here and there. And yeah, so yes, there are people that I have like learned from and admire, but a lot of it is just like winging it. You know, a lot of what I've done is just like, well, I hope this will work. But yeah. And then when I inevitably fail, I reach out to someone. I'm like, what the hell did I do? I don't know. And they're like, okay.
No, I mean, you've described it perfectly, because Instagram has just been such a wonderful source of community and also information. It's like,
yeah,
if we've found anything like in, you know, our work or our practice or like some sort of like skill we aren't super familiar with, we know there's somebody out there that does. And so like just kind of putting the call out there. And then also like, I really can't wait until we can travel again. Like that's been one of the most beautiful things, is like every place I go, it's like I automatically have like a best friend there, you know, and somebody that I've known from Instagram, or some cool shop to check out, or an exhibition to look at, or something cool that, you know, this community has like brought to my attention or shared. So absolutely. And that's a thing about like the woodworking community and really like craft and trades, is the communal aspect of it. And, you know, of course there are people that, you know, aren't very open and don't want to share their knowledge and whatever, that's fine. But there's, like you said, there's so many other people out there that have valuable knowledge, or willing to share it, more than willing to share their knowledge. You know, they're sharing parts of themselves, and it's been really an awesome experience. So thank you for sharing that. So, you know, speaking of projects and things like that, what are your favorite types of projects to build, and what are you working on currently?
I really, really like bed frames. I really like them. They're really fun. And you can get really innovative with them. Like I think I've made 4 to date, and they have all been very different, like vastly different designs, vastly different builds, you know, and like they're challenging and new in different ways. I not to toot my own horn, but I'm a very intelligent person. And so I love a challenge. I get really bored really easily. And so I love when there's something that I can do that's like, I've done this before, but I have never done this before. And this is cool. And then I, you know, because I like to think that I'm an intelligent person, I get annoyed when it doesn't go perfectly the first time. You know, I'm like, God damn it, I worked so hard, I was doing it right, and then it's just broken. I just meh. And I like have a little tantrum about it, and then I get over myself and I figure it out. But you know, like I love that, like the bed frame kind of always gives me that experience. Like every time I've done it, it's been like, well, that didn't go as planned, or like, oh, that was a fail. Oh, okay, no, I got it. Oh no, we're good. Okay, I got it. We're good. But like, so I love those. I really like the waterfall edge design in tables. I have a lot of fun with it. It's not as challenging to me anymore because I've done a lot of them at this point. And so, but they never get old, you know, like it's one of those things where it's so it feels almost majestic to me to like look at a slab and watch it look like a Salvador Dali painting, like melting, you know, where it just kind of cascades off the sides and it just formally fits this perfect space. You know, like I did one over a credenza. So like the top of the credenza is a waterfall design on both sides. And, you know, like the whole design of that, just like, you don't even see it, but I know that it's there. And it just brings me such joy to like know that it just looks continuous and it just makes it all whole and tied together in ways that I feel like some things don't. Like some, you know, like I love a good dovetail, but the dovetail can often make it feel a little disjointed, you know, like, and that's part of the design, you know, it feels like two things are coming together that shouldn't, which is awesome. But I love the continuous feeling of the continuous frame. So those are my favorite things to do. What I'm working on right now, I'm like looking around my shop because I'm like, what do I have working right now? I have two epoxy tables on my bench right now. One is going to be like a walnut lagoon kind of situation, and one is an elm slab that was so like punky and rotted throughout the whole thing that I was like, I really can't use this for anything else. Like I literally spent all of today chiseling out the rotted sections of this slab. And so it just looks like a gigantic void. But I'm like getting, you know, a little cast set up for it. And I'm going to pour epoxy in that in the next couple of days. And then I don't even know what it's going to be. I just know that it's going to be something to do with that. And yeah, so that's what's on the roster right now. And then I have like a whole bunch of other stuff. I have some baby gates going on. I've got a bed frame for myself at some point this summer. I've got an outdoor bar and like storage compartment thing for my best friend. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on through here.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it. So what is something that you were surprised to learn about woodworking and your relationship to craft? I love that you pointed out that you're really drawn to the waterfall effect. Would you call yourself a surrealist? I mean, I'm very interested to hear more about that.
You know, in order to answer that question, I would need to know what surrealism is. Again, I got my degree in sociology. Art is what I'm like, it's pretty. You know, so I don't know. I love nature. I am an aggressive nature junkie. And, you know, like I live for hiking. I picked living in a city, but I live in the northwest part of Philadelphia, where we have the biggest national park within city limits in the United States. The Wissahickon Forest goes all the way from the northest part of the city to Center City. So it's like a good 8-mile long stretch of forest and river. And it's, you know, it's truly incredible. And so I live in Northwest, where we have that not 5 minutes from my house. So I can go hiking anytime I want. There's a big river. I can go kayaking. I literally put my kayak on top of my car and I pop my boat in the river 3 minutes from my house. So it's like, I have all of this, like one of my favorite things about living in Philadelphia. You know, we have all of this nature, and I am just like aggressively addicted to nature. You know, I turned my little cinder block backyard into a full natural habitat for wildlife. So I plant, you know, for all of the pollinators. I went out one night in the middle of the night and I had the world's biggest slug I have ever seen in my entire life, like crawling across my thing. And I was like, glad to have you, buddy. You're disgusting, but I'm glad to have you. And like I have little salamanders in my yard. So like I live for nature. I love it. And so I think that's what draws me to the continuous portion of like the waterfall edge and, you know, river tables in general. You know, I know a lot of people dabble in like other colors of epoxy, and those can be great. And like I've done some work with like black epoxy, and I've done some with purple, and I've done some with different colors, but they don't speak to me the same way as an actual like river table epoxy pour, where it's like you make it a little bit green because you went to this river one time in the middle of the winter and the river that was moving and alive. You could feel it, and it was palpable, and it was emerald green. Like, and that's the kind of thing where I'm like, that's what I want in my work. That's what I want depicted. That's what I want to immortalize. I want people to be excited about nature, because I feel like we have lost it. You know, like I feel like in the age of technology and the age of like having a cell phone where literally you can do anything at any time. You can have Amazon deliver something to you in an hour and a half. You can have, you know, if you want to pay that money, you can do that. You know, if, and I feel like with this constant connection to the internet, I'm not even going to say to each other, because it's not, you know, we're not connected to each other. We go out to dinner and we sit on our phones for an hour and a half. You know, like it's becoming a world that, growing up in the boonies in Vermont, I just don't recognize. You know, I don't understand it. And so if I can, I guess that's my favorite thing about woodworking. You know, it reconnects me to nature in ways that I can't be connected in any other job. You know, like my best friend works as a graphic designer. My partner's a graphic designer. My best friend's partner's a graphic designer. You know, they all spend all day with a computer, and I'm like, bless you, because I don't know how you do it. I would die. I would just die. I forgot how to use a computer this year. You know, my partner's best friend had to show me how to use a mouse. It was like a whole thing. And so I'm just like, I am so detached from like that whole concept, that whole aspect of life, where I'm like, I don't want that. And I want people to be able to connect with nature again. And like, I feel like if I can make something out of wood that they can see, and they can, you know, I just finished this headboard yesterday, right? And I delivered it. And my client grew that tree on his property. And he can now lie in bed and look at his headboard and remember the tree that was on his property. And he can look at the bench that I made for the foot of his bed, and he can remember that tree, and he can remember the shade that he had from that tree. He can remember all of the family fires that he's going to have because they had to take it down. And, you know, they had some firewood from branches, and they can have family gatherings outside. And, you know, it's all connected. It's all connected. It's a very long-winded way of saying it's all connected. And I just want to be able to like tap into that connection and bring that connection to people. It's just so important. And we only have one planet, and it's dying. So if we can save it, you know, by caring about what we have in our houses, by, you know, all of these ways, then I want to be a part of that.
Absolutely. No. And I really appreciate that. Especially in this day and age. I live very rurally, and I'm finding that a lot of my friends are starting to come out this way as well. And that's wonderful. I did not realize that about Philadelphia, and that you're able to get to that, you know, get back into nature so quickly. That's one thing I really like about it is, you know, I can get into town and, you know, be around people in the hustle and bustle. If I want, I can go to concerts and do whatever, but I can come back out and get that peace and quiet that, you know, you really can't put a price on. And I laugh because, you know, I have a friend in Queens, and she jokes about like, I would probably, you know, freak out if I lived where you live. She's like, I've got to have the noise. And I'm like, I'm the complete opposite now. You know, when I go stay in the city, I'm like, oh, I'm not sleeping for a week, you know, like I'm just so used to, I'm spoiled. But you've reminded me of that connection, and especially in this day and age when we're only connecting through these things,
Right.
it is really important that we focus on connecting with each other and not the medium that we're using. Because yes, it's very easy to say, okay, I'm going to have family dinner, and then after dinner everybody's sitting here on their phones. You know, you talk more on Facebook to your father than you do in person, and it's very interesting. So thank you for that. Kind of shifting gears here, if you're comfortable,
Sure.
would you share a little bit of what your experience has been like as a queer woodworker in craft?
Honestly, it's been fantastic. You know, I've had a really, really great experience with people. I mean, you know, in the crafts, like doing work for Hurricane Woodwork, I've had an amazing experience because I also work for myself. So I get the luxury of not having to deal with douchebags. Like it's a really nice, you know, working in construction was a little bit different. You know, I worked for a couple different people and like most of them were cool. You know, there was a couple people who were really not, where I was like, oh, you're the worst. Okay. Like I had this one guy call me Tracy for 2 days because I wouldn't tell him what EJ stood for. And I was like, okay, all right, sure. And he like, it was like a whole thing. And, you know, I wound up putting an end to it by calling him Linda. He was not thrilled. He was not pleased, but it just like, it stopped him dead in his tracks. And I was like, unfortunately for you, sir, you did pick an intelligent person to fuck with. And I can't help you with that. Like, I wish you the best. Pick on someone dumb next time because like, good luck. You know, and so you know, he was the worst, but it was what it was. And, you know, I wound up leaving that job and it's, you know, been a non-issue because I work for myself. So if you're shitty, I can be like, hi. You know, I've had the occasional client who has been like a little, like I had one guy be like, well, I think that you should probably bring someone with you to do install. And I was like, I work by myself. I don't have anyone really like on staff that I can bring with me. And he was like, well, I would just feel more comfortable if you brought another guy with you. And I was like, oh, so you would like for me to bring a man to do install? Okay. All right. So when I was like hiring a couple months ago, one of the guys that I interviewed was this delightful man. I absolutely loved him. I still love him. His name is Makoto. And he, in his interview, I told him about this experience. And he was like, oh, you know what we can do? And I was like, what's that? He was like, I'll wear a dress on install day. And I was like, I will love you forever. Please do that. Please, I am begging you, please do that. That is like the best. And I hired him immediately. I was like, you're my favorite. I will pay you whatever you want. Like, this is great. So like, don't go crazy because I'm broke, but like, I'll pay you whatever you want. But it was great. So I've had like such a great experience like with people because I'm also very clear about who I am. You know, you can't come on an interview with me and be like, I didn't know you were so progressive. Really? What do you mean? Can you read? I don't understand. How did you find out about this job application? Like, I just don't get it. So, you know, like there's no waffling. And like the people on Instagram, even, you know, I've had really great conversations with people that I probably don't agree with on some stuff, you know, like there's, you know, I have a couple followers who are very like Blue Lives Matter. And I'm like, okay, you know, but I try to have those conversations, even though they kind of make me want to die. And like, I'm kind of like, please God, no, like, I don't want to talk about this again for the 80 millionth time. I have already had this conversation. I really can't have it again. My brain might explode inside of my skull and I might kill you. That might happen. You know, like as much as I'm very much like that hot-headed, like angry queer who's like, you know, like I feel like, you know, we've kind of lost I don't want to say agency to not have those conversations, but we don't really have the luxury of not having those conversations anymore. So like I've had some great conversations with like older white men who've messaged me being like, can you please explain to me why it is that your sexuality matters in what you do? And I'm like, yes, I can. Yes, let's talk about it because you're asking in a very respectful way. And I appreciate that you are trying to understand why this matters to me and why this matters on a more global scale. So yeah, let's break it down. Let's talk about it. And then I drink a beer and I fall asleep and watching like some crappy TV show that I don't have to pay attention to. So it's like a way to unwind. But those conversations need to happen. And, you know, if I'm in a mental space where I can do it, then great. If I'm not, then I just respond the next day, you know, or not at all. But it's, yes, to answer your question, I have had a wonderful experience in this community. You know, I recently put together, I don't know if you saw in June, I put together a Pride Month giveaway. And so I put together this massive giveaway for some very lucky queer woodworker. And we got like a whole bunch of people on board, like a couple different straight white guys, like a couple straight Jewish guys, like Total Boat was in on it, Bessie Clamps was in on it, and it was literally, and I was very clear, like in my message to these big sponsors, being like, I want to do a Pride Month giveaway, and it is specifically to benefit a queer woodworker. And they were like, great, sign me up. And I was like, cheers, love you. Like, and it's stuff like that where that means the world to me. And I'll promote the living bejesus out of your brand. Like, because one, you make a great product. Two, you're a phenomenal human being, and I'm super here for it. You know, so the woodworking community is like, it's the strongest community that I've been a part of since my queer community in college. It's pretty awesome. I'm super here for it.
That's incredible. And thank you for sharing that. Especially like the confidence aspect. Actually in another interview today, I asked a similar question, and they said the same thing, is, you know, there's just not room for interpretation. I am who I am. And
right.
And I had mentioned in that interview, and I mentioned here too, for anybody else that is listening, you know, I know lumber yards and hardware stores and things like that tend to be the places people get the most bias. But I'm with you. I think that those important conversations are happening. You're right. Like, they have to happen, unfortunately. But I also think you gave a great way of how to deal with that, you know, like taking care of yourself and your space first. You know, there will be somebody out there to educate them, but
right.
it's also, you know, it's not your job, but really appreciate you doing it, because it's the only way we're going to advance, you know, is
right.
to do that. So
and we just don't have the luxury anymore, you know. It's like, I guess like pre-Trump, I had a lot of friends who were like, even in college, who were very much like, it's not my job. It's not my job to teach you about racism. It's not my job to teach you about, you know, there's the internet. We have the internet. You are perfectly capable of reading. Go read something. And I'm like, yeah, no, I hear you. Like, I feel that anger. I feel that frustration. I feel that overwhelming, oppressive, like, I can't do this again. I can't. Like, I feel that. But we had Trump as a president for a reason. Like, that was a thing that happened twice. Like, or like, not twice, but like, people voted for him twice. Like, friends of my partner voted for him twice, where I'm like, I don't understand. Like, how is this a thing? And then I realized, like, oh, it's because we stopped talking to people. Like, Trump was elected, and so many people, at least that I know, were like, I'm never talking to them again. Okay.
How did that work out?
I mean, I feel you. I never want to talk to them either, because clearly my rights as a human being, my Black friends' rights as human beings, my Indigenous families' rights as human beings, like, we don't matter. Understood. I don't want to talk to them either. Unfortunately, if we stopped talking to people, we wind up with a country who hates everybody. Like, and we already have that country, but like, we had, I don't know, we were making progress, and then we stopped talking. And you just can't. You just can't. And it sucks, because it's exhausting. worse. But
Mhm.
anyway, sorry.
No, and absolutely, like, that's one thing that I really like about woodworking is it has this ability to kind of be like a neutral space for people to be able to learn and kind of like approach topics and people that they're not going to see in their everyday life, watching this particular news channel or going to, certain club or church or whatever it is in their community every week. um, Watching this particular moment, like the introduction of technology, seeing how women, gender nonconforming makers, BIPOC makers, and even disabled makers, like
Mm-hmm.
being able to reach out and connect. I think it's also bringing perspectives to these people that normally are very insulated. So it's been really interesting to watch, and I absolutely agree with you that the conversations have to happen. And I think we're very lucky that we have woodworking as one of those things to kind of bring us both to the table, bring both sides to the table. Because you're right, you can be angry and sling mud, and Lord knows, we want to, and so many of us deserve to, and have that pent up rage. But you're right, like having those conversations, eventually that's what it has to come down to. So thank you for sharing that. And on that note, what is something you would like to see changed or improved, in the woodworking or craft communities for underrepresented voices?
I would really like to see more companies making that effort, that step to be like, yeah, okay. And, I don't want it to be like, no, only hire X. It's no, because you need to have somebody who's talented, who knows what they're doing, who has a frame of reference for whatever it is that they're promoting. You have to have that. But it would be nice for these bigger companies to like see that and recognize how whitewashed the woodworking world is, and how, straight male perspective the woodworking world is. It's so, I was talking about this, I think, in a previous interview, but, like a lot of straight white men have the luxury, at least in the woodworking world, have the luxury of learning from their dad. Their dad was a carpenter, their dad was a cabinet maker, their dad was a furniture maker, their dad did this, all of these things. And they learned those trades early. They had kind of a jump start. And so like when we talk about privilege, that's kind of what we're talking about, at least in the context of woodworking. Like there's so many aspects of privilege, and that's like a whole nother conversation. But if we're talking about like woodworking and the context of why it matters to have diverse perspectives, like my dad died when I was a little kid, and I didn't have access to that. Plus he was, the worst businessman on the face of the planet and didn't know his foot from a hammer. So he couldn't have taught me anything anyway. But, that's not really the point. A lot of queer people grow up without families entirely. A lot of queer people grow up without parents, without aunts and uncles to support them, without, they don't have access to these things. People of color don't have access to a lot of these things. Call it what you want, but if we're looking at like demographics of the country, you have a lot of POC living in inner cities. Inner cities do not have trade schools. It's not a thing. They are going the way of the dinosaur. They don't have art schools either, but like it's academic, English, math, history. Like it's not even necessarily accurate history. I'm sorry, Texas.
I appreciated that.
Like, so you have to look at like everything in the context, right? History. Like I literally talking to my partner and her sister about anti-Jewish propaganda in World War II. And they were like, what is that? And I was like, oh my God, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't know about this? So it's just like all of these things. Circling back, we have to look at everything in the context of privilege. And so I would really like to see these companies recognize that these white men already have their privilege. They already have that leg up. So stop giving all of your, partnership deals to straight white men. Like, I'm sorry, but if I hear one more straight white man explain something to me that I already know, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, I'm going to kill you. Stop talking. Like, I can't. So it's just like I can't even, I feel like a lot of these like guys, I've worked with this guy a while ago, and I would ask him like one question about one very specific thing. And it wound up being this very long-winded explanation of everything. And I was just like, my dude, I know. No, I know. I gotta go. I don't even care what my answer to my actual question was anymore, because I can't do it anymore. So I would really like for these companies to like recognize that, and recognize that we want to learn from different people, and we want to see ourselves in things. Like, representation really matters. It just matters, like growing up as like a gender non-conforming queer person, I was nowhere. There was nothing. I was not anywhere. I wasn't on the internet, really. I wasn't even in the L word. Of all of the places, like, come on. Like, I wasn't anywhere. It's like, if you can have these big companies recognize that, and recognize the importance of having that representation, because that it matters in the context of, if we don't see ourselves anywhere, we assume that we should just be dead. And then all we hear is people telling us you should die. So it's like, that's why these things matter. I'm sorry, it took me a very long time to get to there, but that's the truth, and that's the reality. And so that's really the main thing I would like to see change. Other than that, the community's doing really well. They're not shitty towards people who are trying to learn. They're not shitty towards women trying to learn. They're recognizing the importance of women being in the trades, and what we can bring to it, and the value that we have. I don't know if you can hear, my dog is whining in the background. She's very upset about the lack of representation of people in the media. Very distraught.
All really. Voices heard.
Seriously, she's.
Oh.
She says hi.
Tell
You're
them.
A punk.
Tell them.
Yeah. Ridiculous dog.
Oh gosh.
But yeah, so that's really all I would like to see change. For now. I'm sure I'll come up with something else.
Well, you're right though, because it needs to reflect what the community really looks like. And this project and so many other things, I know of a couple of brands that, have started to focus more on women and gender nonconforming, having social media campaigns and ambassadors and things like that. And shout out to all my sponsors. I love you very much for supporting Pen and Chisel and what I'm trying to do.
Love you.
But I mean, I feel like we're heading in that direction, but I would agree 100%, being very intentional about representing the entire community. And I think brands, especially coming from a marketing background, women make 80% of the household purchasing decisions. So,
yep.
And we exist in, woodworking, the trades, and all of those worlds too. So it doesn't make good financial sense to not have representation, of everyone. Not just
it just feeds back into like the inherent sexism of all of it, being like, well, men make all the decisions. I am so sorry, no, they don't. Like, if you have ever met a man in a heterosexual relationship, every single one of them, barring some crazy people from the Westboro Baptist Church, defer to their wives. like they all do. So like start making your marketing in relation to that. If you have half a brain for business, I mean, if nothing else, think about the money. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Well, and perfect evidence, if you've ever, shown your work, at a trade show, and you've had, a man come in by himself and he's looking at this, and then, maybe it's a chair or something for the house. What is he going to say before he leaves? I got to check with my wife.
Check with my wife.
Mm-hmm. So, yep. We know the deal. Yeah. We know the deal.
Yeah. Yep. Just let them believe that they ran everything for far too long.
Yeah, I think that was probably where we screwed up.
Really dropped the ball.
Oh, awesome. Well, where would you like to see yourself in your practice in the future?
Well, I really want to buy a house. I want to have my shop at my house. I want to have my horse at my house. I want to have all of the things in one space. And I'm changing my answer from a year ago. I maybe want to have one employee so that I'm not working 14-hour days every day. But I want to keep it small, but I want to keep it legit. And I want to do it in one place. And I want to do it economically and ethically and in regard, like taking Mother Nature into consideration at every turn. And that's really what I want. I want to have like an entirely sustainable practice, like down to like all of my electrical, all like solar panels everywhere, like the whole nine, that whole nine. So, but not huge. I can't imagine having like a giant company. I've been watching entirely too much One Tree Hill lately. And, this one character clothing company went bananas. And I was like, I would rather die. It's super good. Thank you so much. No.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. Vicariously through Book Davis. Love you, Sophia Bush.
It's been really interesting lately too. I watched the documentary George Nakashima's nephew made, and hearing more of his story. And then I also attended an event with the Furniture Society, and they had a designer and then also someone from Stickley speaking. And to see the progression of like, it started with this like one person, one idea or one dream, and like the scale of things, it's like, holy, it does get to a point where it's like, you do get removed from the process. You get, removed from why you're there. And I think that was something that, like, I really appreciated, like, hearing more about Nakashima's, like, yes, he had a team that worked with him, but he was like telling them exactly like what to do, up until his death. And you can't do that after a certain size. And so I think that's a balance a lot of people are trying to find in woodworking, and probably craft in particular, is like, you want to grow, you want to scale, but what's too much,
right.
Because it is it's a very personal practice. So
yeah, and it's like when you're working on something, you're like physically in every single portion of it. And if I could grow to the point where I could outsource like all of my social media so that I don't actually have to do my posts, that would be cool. Like if I could grow to the point where I could have someone else like handle my email, that would be great. But I don't want to grow to the point where I have to outsource like the whole build. If I could outsource some sanding, I wouldn't cry about it, but like, or if I could buy a CNC machine and not have to flatten a slab with a router sled, I would be thrilled. But, like I'm not going to miss that. But, like I don't want to get to the point where I don't actually know what's being worked on in my shop. Like I was talking to this cabinet maker that I knew, and he was like, I grew to the point where I was just doing all of the admin work and it was terrible. And I was like, yeah, it sounds it. I mean, you got into cabinet making and woodworking because you wanted to work with your hands, and now you're sitting behind a computer ordering shipments. Like, no, that sounds awful. So yeah, no, I have absolutely no interest in
that. Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Where can people get in touch with you and see more of your work?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram, sort of on TikTok. I have, I think, like 10 videos up. I'm so sorry. Probably not going to grow a whole lot more. But I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook. I have a website at hurricanewoodwork.com. You can find me at Hurricane Woodwork on all of those other aforementioned platforms. I think I even have a Pinterest that I haven't looked at in like 9 months. So like all of those things are readily available. My Instagram is very, very active. You can definitely find me there. But yeah, so you can find me kind of at all of the things at Hurricane Woodwork. And
Very
thank
awesome.
you so much for having me. It's been such an honor.
Yes, thank you for being on. And I just want to say I love the name Hurricane Woodwork. I'm like, oh, like that's a good one. Whenever you reached out, I was like, I like that. So
my old boss gave me that one.
Nice. There you go. Very nice.
It was a hot mess at 22. That's how I earned the nickname Hurricane.
Hurricane. Oh, okay. I got you. Got you. Yeah, I think I would probably be like a tornado, F5, something like that,
Yep. Yep, that sounds about right. I recognize that description.
Oh, well, thank you so much, EJ. This was an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to see what you build next.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.